I think most of you guys are in the US, so you will likely have heard that there was a shooting at a college in Oregon on the 1st of this month. It's also quite likely you have heard the name Chris Mintz. Chris was present at the shooting and did what he could to help people. During this event, he got shot 5 times. Luckily, Chris is one hard motherfucker, and none of the wounds were fatal. In fact, in a Facebook post he made a couple days ago, Chris said he is recovering well. He also decided to use this post to share his account of what happened. I'm going to read it to you, and I'm going to read it to you in its entirety. He says one of the reasons he didn't go to press was because he didn't want it messed with, and I'm going to make sure that I don't mess with it just by giving you the whole thing. If you want to skip this, there will be a timestamp in the description, but if you choose to skip it, please read it yourself. I think it's important that you know what he said when I show you what I'm going to show you, because I think his concerns about the press were right. Here's his post. 15th October 2015. I want to first thank everyone who has stepped up to help the families involved at UCC. All the support I have received is overwhelming, and I could never repay them. I'm about to give my statement of how I remember that day. Please be cautious because it may be graphic. I am releasing my statement on Facebook because I'm not doing this for publicity, and I don't want any media outlet to alter it in any way. This isn't about politics. This isn't about me. This is about a community healing. I am so happy with how the community has bonded and supported everyone during this healing. It started so normal, the day that is. Work went well and I had plans for coffee with a friend before school. I ironically made a comment to my friend that I should skip class, and my friend told me I couldn't skip. Off to school I went. I was in my writing 1-to-1 class, and it was a typical day at UCC. The teacher was going over assignments, making the class laugh like she had done all week. We were sitting in class and there was a bunch of yelling that started in the other room. My teacher walked up to the door that connected our classroom and asked if everything was okay. No one could tell what the yelling was. The teacher knocked on the door and there were gunshots that sounded like firecrackers going off. I sat in the front middle of the class, so we all got up and took off out of the classroom, and I stopped and held the door open and waited for everyone to leave safely. We all took off running down the breezeway toward the library. A boy and I collided while running because of the chaos, and it knocked me to the ground. A counselor kept screaming that someone needed to tell the people in the library, and I told her I'd do it. I ran in and told everyone they needed to leave and go to the other side of the campus. I ran through the book aisles while yelling and pushed the emergency exits closest to registration open and ran through them and back down towards Snyder Hall. I ran back towards Snyder, and people across campus were walking around like nothing was going on, so I continued yelling at them to get out of there to leave. I was at the end of Snyder Hall. I saw a young girl who seemed to just be showing up to school, and I yelled at her, "You can't be here. There's somebody shooting. You need to leave." Her face, it changed. She seemed so scared. This is when I started making my way towards the classroom. I was walking slower, but as fast as I could because I didn't know where he was. I got to a classroom and looked into the door because it had a glass slate. A guy that was further away and hiding behind cars startled me and yelled, "Don't, man. He's going to shoot you, man." I stepped back a little bit and noticed a lady's foot wedged in the door. I was told later that this was Kim. There was so much blood and it was so dark. I nudged the door closed. I could only see one of the students through the door. She was screaming and yelling and covered in blood. I motioned my finger over my mouth, communicating to be quiet, and motioned both my hands down for them to stay down. At the time, I didn't know the classroom was full of people. I thought it was only the two of them. I put my back up against the door and was just waiting. I heard the sirens coming down and yelled to the guy in the parking lot, "You need to go get the cops. Tell them where we're at." He couldn't hear me, so I had to repeat it a few times. All of a sudden, the shooter opened the classroom door beside the door to my left. He leaned half of his torso out and started shooting as I turned toward him. He had a black shirt on, a shaved head, was tan and wearing glasses. He was so nonchalant through it all, like he was playing a video game, and showed no emotion. The shots knocked me to the ground and felt like a truck hit me. He shot me again while I was on the ground and hit my finger, and said, "That's what you get for calling the cops," and I laid there, in a fetal position, unable to move, and responded, "I didn't call the cops, man. They were already on the way." He leaned further out of the classroom and tried to shoot my phone. I yelled, "It's my kid's birthday, man." He pointed the gun right at my face, and then he retreated back into the class. I'm still confused at why he didn't shoot me again. I tried to push myself back against the classroom door, but I couldn't move at all. My legs felt like ice, like they didn't exist until I tried to move. When I moved, pain shot through me like a bomb going off. I couldn't move. His shots knocked me down onto my right hip. I tried to use my right hand to push myself. I started to lose track of time, but it felt like I laid there for days. I saw the first officer appear, coming towards me from the science building. I remember him wearing a blue polo type shirt. I heard glass start to fall in the classroom, but couldn't tell if shots were going in from the officers or out from the shooter. Then the gunfire just stopped, and a second police officer crested the rock wall near the bathroom. They came up upon me, but was unaware if I was the shooter and communicated back and forth between each other. I told them, "He shot me. He's in that classroom, but I don't know if he's down." I don't recall a lot after that. I answered questions and stayed awake. More officers arrived in tactical gear. While still laying there, some students ran out of the classroom, some covered in blood. I guess my feet were close enough to the door. Eventually they had to move me because the door kept opening and hitting my legs. A friend came out of the classroom and kneeled down beside me, traumatized and crying. I think she tried to pray with me. The only thing I could say was, "It's my son's birthday. Please call my son's mom and tell her I can't pick him up from school today." Officers made her leave, and an officer kneeled behind me and said, "Everything is going to be okay." Him and another officer moved me away from the door. An EMT I'm friends with was one of the first responders to the scene. I looked up and saw him walk up to the classroom door and said, "Hey buddy." He looked at me and responded, "Hey." When I saw him, I knew we were all going to be okay. I want to apologize to any person, family, or anyone affected if this statement hurts them. I have hesitated to put it out for that reason. This is how I remember it. I knew this would be a painful piece for a lot of people, and it bothers me to bring the pain to others. I have to thank all the people who responded and everyone in the hospitals. They are the real heroes. They saved us. I was shot 5 times. Once in the left leg, breaking my femur. Once in the right leg, breaking my tibia and fibula. Once in the abdomen that exited my right hip. Once at the top of my shoulder blade. It is still in my back. Broke off part of my scapula and was about an inch from my aorta. And finally my left finger, shattering the mid-joint of my ring finger. Although I'm not completely sure, I believe the caliber was a .38. I am recovering well, and thank everyone for their thoughts and prayers. Chris Mintz. Yes, that took quite a while to read, but I think it's important that I present the whole thing. Having heard it, I want you to think for a moment. What are the standout parts for you? In fact, just imagine you're a journalist or editor. What would be your headline if you were writing about this post he made? Would you go the raw story route? Oregon mass shooting hero posts account on Facebook. Shooter acted, quote, like he was playing a video game. Nah, that's not quite right, is it? Let's check out Bustle's approach. Oregon gunman acted like he was playing a video game, according to survivor Chris Mintz. Sorry, was he pressing buttons on an Xbox controller? I must have missed the part about him breaking out the Doritos and Mountain Dew. Let's get a little reminder of this quote's context, because right now it sort of sounds like the shooter must have looked like he was hallucinating, believing he was playing Time Crisis. He was so nonchalant through it all, like he was playing a video game. It is an insignificant bit of description regarding the gunman's demeanor. He could have said, like, a number of other things, like the people were just targets at a shooting range, for example. The mention of video games is part of an illustration of his level of calmness. He was acting as calmly as if he were playing a video game. He was not acting like he was playing a video game in particular. I swear, they just can't resist the tiniest whiff of video games in relation to a mass shooting and boom, that's the headline. Let's take a look at a couple more well-known outlets. Maybe they've done better. Let's see what headline BuzzFeed has gone for. Army veteran says Oregon college shooter acted like he was playing a quote-unquote video game. Never mind. Let's try ABC. Oregon college shooting survivor describes gunman as acting, quote, like he was playing a video game. Is it just me? Am I wrong to think that they're doing this just to get clicks and to screw over games as usual? I can't see why they'd pick it for any other reason. I mean, even if they think the description of the shooter's demeanor was key, even if they really wanted to point that out, above everything else that was said, why would they pick the like he was playing a video game line? What does that even mean? If they say that, without context, it could mean that Chris Mintz was saying that the shooter was trying to do 360 no-scope headshots. The Guardian chose this point for the headline, but here's how they did it. Oregon shooting victim recounts run-in with gunman. Quote, he was so nonchalant. And then they have the, it was like he was playing a video game quote. To me, the difference is huge, and although I'm still not too sure about making the gunman the focus, I think it still helps illustrate how messed up the video game headlines are. And here's an even clearer contrast. Remember the first one I showed you, the raw story one? The Reuters.com headline for the exact same piece is, Oregon mass shooting survivor posts account of blood, pain and healing. Gives more than just a little bit of a different impression, doesn't it? If you were an editor at a news outlet, picking a title for a piece of reporting on this Facebook post, would you feel comfortable publishing any of those video game headlines? I think I'd feel pretty slimy. But, as usual, that's just another one of my harmful opinions.